Scream 2, 1997, directed by Wes Craven, and written by, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin Williamson, I think is how you say his name. Um, this was an interesting movie. I'm kidding. This is your first video on my channel. I've probably talked about Kevin Williamson in every single video I've made, whether it's relevant or not, for like the last year. I devote so much airtime to Kevin Williamson because I think he's fascinating, and well, things like Scream 2 are at like are some of his best stuff. I talk about Kevin Williamson a lot because I also grew up with his movies. I watched Scream 2 like probably 50 times. I remember I saw this before I saw Scream 1. I remember the VHS tape recorded off of like DirecTV television or some bullshit. Watched it all the time. Very informative to me, and I'm also a big fan of Wes Craven, and these two together is pretty exciting. And I also have two people with me who are pretty exciting. I have Jacob. How you doing, Jacob?
I'm good. Mhm.
Awesome. And anyways, we're doing Scream 2. And I have Justin from Style is Substance. Style, how you doing?
Okay. I just watched Scream 2 last night, at least at the time of this recording. First time I saw it. And as you know, I'm the biggest Scream fan here.
Oh, absolutely.
I should
Gotta,
say for once I've actually seen the movie Zach wants me to watch. I have seen this.
oh yeah. It's fantastic. I mean, I have Scream guy tattooed on my arm or whatever.
Scream
I'm
guy.
obsessed with these movies. Rather than
Ghostface.
just even go general, I think all the thoughts will come out as we talk about it. And my favorite way of doing these videos is when we actually get to go death by death and stuff like that. It makes for a more fluid and coherent breakdown. But we open our first deaths are Jada Pinkett and Omar Epps at the movie theater for Stab, based on the events of the first film starring Heather Graham. I mean, who wants to take the first stab at this scene? Yeah, I can
First
do it.
stab.
Yeah,
Go
sure.
for it.
Okay.
I feel
So
like
this
you have
scene,
more in mind like about this scene than I do. I have like vague concepts floating around about this sequence, but I don't really know what to make of it, at least in the context of the movie surrounding it.
all right. So let me lay out like what I find most interesting about this scene, and then you guys can kind of go back and forth. Um, so this scene immediately calls into question like the noticeable absence of black or colored characters really from the first film and from the majority of not only Wes Craven's work but Kevin Williamson's as well. Kevin Williamson got a lot better at that with like the Vampire Diaries, had a far more diverse and inclusive cast. But in this one, Jada Pinkett's character Maureen does say like specifically that horror movies are notorious for excluding the African American element and all that fun stuff, and it's cheeky. It's obviously postmodern in the sense that they're there to watch the Stab movie, and also that they point out racism or racist
Right.
tendencies,
Like
then they
when
play
Bla-
directly into them. But 1 second, I find like the thing that really seals it for me, because that doesn't really impress me. Like pointing out a trope and then playing directly into it when it's like this kind of heavy, and when it's definitely a writer and a director who've been like accused of not whitewashing, but you know what I mean, not having diverse movies. There's a part where like Jada Pinkett gets stabbed in the stomach, and she's walking on stage past this like sea of like mindless fucking white people pretending to kill each other, and she screams like probably the most pitiful like and like desperate scream of the movie, like on a stage for white people as she's like dying. There's something extremely powerful about that moment, because like she does that huge scream, she looks out at the audience and seems like so sad. Well, she's obviously dying. I would be sad too, but it's like a greater sadness than that. It's like, and then she felt like that makes good on the weird deconstruction of the that actually feels like a deconstruction of the trope to me, more than
well,
Omar Epps listening against a bathroom wall and getting his ear fucked up with a knife.
right. Well, actually, that was one element about the film that I wasn't. I'm still not entirely sure of if it's really subverting the trope or it's just doing the trope. But it
I think that
acknowledges the trope. The trope, of course, being that when black people are even included in these kind of films, they're usually the first to die. But like it takes like 10 to 11 minutes for them to die in the film. But I'm wondering, like, is it really subverting the trope, or is it
I
just like
don't think that it
reinforcing
is. I
it?
think it's a lot more interested in like who benefits from the trope, because I like I feel implicated by Jada Pinkett's death, not so much by Omar Epps. That's kind of like funny almost. Jada Pinkett's death is far different. I feel implicated in it. Like, she looks out at a literal sea of just like weird white faces, either ghost face or like actual white people, like just watching her die. There's something fucking crazy there, and I refuse to believe that Wes Craven didn't know what he was doing. Like, there's something like wild about that framing. And I think it's just showing like who benefits from the trope, because the Scream doesn't necessarily divert tropes, doesn't necessarily do that, because all the tropes are fulfilled like wonderfully, but they're fulfilled in a very different kind of way that like at least reframes like the purpose of the trope.
I almost think it's interacting more with like the style, like the 90s style we've talked about ad nauseum. Because I think these like movies and shows, because I'm also thinking like primarily of like Buffy, because like Buffy is like an incredibly white show, and a lot, even like the drama in that show, like Buffy, like the major tension in the show is that like Buffy strives towards normalcy, but it's a very like white sense of normalcy.
I specifically remember when they first introduced the black character Trick, and Trick is in the car and Buffy going like, "This is such a white neighborhood," and then he like does every stereotypically late 90s black thing he could possibly do.
Yeah, and you could argue like I talked about this beforehand. I haven't seen the first film in ages, but Nev is a very like Nev Campbell's character Sydney is like a very Buffy type character, in that she strives towards normalcy, but it's a very kind of, even then, like not just white, but like very like heteronormative white upper middle class sense of normalcy. So there is like, I think it is calling into question like it's the privilege in these narratives, or at least like the implicit privilege in these narratives, because they are like popular media, so they know who they're trying to appeal to, I suppose, because they know who like the majority of the audience for Scream 2 is, It's the people that relate to Nev Campbell, the people who had a home like Nev Campbell did, and lived in a place like Nev Campbell did, that kind of vibe.
And I mean, if I can speak even more meta, in the first film, Billy and Stu killed people that Billy and Stu fucking hated. Mickey's just trying to make a fucking movie. And
Mickey is like literally just does not give a shit. He is like a very different breed from them.
Yeah.
I would argue he's like, he makes like Billy Loomis not seem like a psychopath. Just like Billy Loomis seems like comparatively like just a normal fucking asshole who went too far, compared to Billy Loomis, who's like full on Joker mode. Like,
I think
like no ideology.
I don't know. I think Billy's still a psychopath.
No, he is a psychopath, but I mean, like, Billy Loomis.
Well, we'll get to Mickey later on.
We'll get to Mickey later on, but like Mickey formed the thesis for part of season 2 of Your Cult Boyfriend, so like we'll get to him
which
later.
I actually have a lot to say about. But
we'll get to
that. I was talking to Zach about this earlier. It's good stuff.
The scene could also just be a case of like poorly aged things. Dude, I think it works. But I think it probably was like a lot more provocative in 1997 than it is in 2021.
I suppose.
Well, maybe, but I think at any rate, it's still a confrontation of the issue.
I mean, I think it confronts it well. I feel implicated by the composition. Maybe not even by the writing, but by the direction of Craven.
I mean, towards the beginning, so the girlfriend is like, "Oh, I don't want to watch this because like I don't have any like proper representation on screen," and the guy is like, "Oh, it doesn't matter." There's definitely some commentary there about how not just how people of different races engage with horror films, but also people of different genders, and then in turn, I think like ultimately when they attend this theater, what happens is they get killed, and that's ultimately what I think that the film's ultimately just saying that, at least as far as the genre has gone for so long, is that just Black people are treated just as like bodies to be slaughtered, just as more just the statistics for the kill count, and I find it interesting that it does take like. it is like a 12th of the movie that you spend time with them, because they don't die until like 11 minutes in. And yeah, they exist almost just to be killed, but at the same time, they also exist as commentary on the fact that they are being killed. And that's ultimately what I think that a lot of these characters, these archetypes, exist as.
I would also like to inject with that. Also, I think it's relevant that she's a woman as well, particularly because like when they actually start watching the movie, most of her criticisms about it are like about how the actress in the movie playing the Drew Barrymore character, that's not actually Drew Barrymore.
Oh, why is like, she like? What?
She's a woman. Like, yeah, she's a woman being objectified. So I think, and you know, it's the whole thing of like.
I would argue it's not just about the fact that that's a woman being objectified, but it's also specifically it's not just a woman, but it's the white woman that's always glorified and is treated. With the sense of like sensationalist, like being glamorized, that where it's like it's always like a white body.
No, it's the thing all the way back to like Birth of a Nation. You know, there's no greater threat you can put on screen than like, you know, violence against a white woman. You know, it's
that's ultimately
that's like a very old thing in movies,
but at the same
or
time,
just
like,
literature.
But I'm wondering, like, what are Williamson and Craven expecting like the viewer to have a conversation about in relation to this the scene? Because I think like
at this point in horror, it was just about recognizing that there is an unseen African American element, really.
Yeah, and I think there are, you know, obviously the cast, once you actually get into the movie, it's slightly more diverse than at least the first movie.
Yeah,
but
I would maybe argue the reason why, like, you could say it's dated, and maybe it just is. But at the same time, like, I think the idea here is like, well, it's not about the African American experience because it's ultimately a horror film, and these are the genre restrictions that we have to first address it in order to get anywhere. In order to get a Get Out, we have to at least first acknowledge what the issue is. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as to call it dated myself, only because I think like this is more like, as like you said, confrontational than anything I've seen recently. So I would argue it's probably more mature than movies we have right now. But not to say it's like.
I'm just saying I can understand why somebody could see it as dated.
Yeah. I don't mean to say like this is like, you know, I don't feel I can pass judgment on this.
I'll go to war over every aspect of this movie, but I will tell you that scene was definitely more provocative like 20 years, 15 years ago. No question.
Yeah. My
also. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
My only suspicion of it is just that and this is actually my suspicion of like a lot of the movie, in a way, I think, but is that it only seems to have a loose bearing on what follows it. Not because I actually think this is like a very political movie, and I will attempt to get into that later. But
we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
In kind of a different way, I think, from how Zach sees it. But I do think it's a very political movie, but I don't think it like returns to that element, not in the sense that it no longer returns to the race element at all, just that it kind of abandons the whole idea of identity politics as it goes on, and it kind of moves towards like a much broader critique as it goes on. So it opens at this point of like a very specific, you know, critique, and then it kind of broadens pretty wildly after that. So I don't know if that makes sense. I just think it's like an odd thing in the movie is that it doesn't really set the stage well, I think, for like what the movie is actually going to end up spending most of its runtime like interrogating. But it interrogates something. Yeah, like I think it's a very good opening. Like I love this opening. I actually like it better than the first movie's opening.
It does establish the thesis. We're just getting like broadsided by the racial implications. I mean, they're there seeing a movie called Stab based on the events of Scream, life imitating art, imitating life. Like the thesis is still there. Like
I was just gonna say that. It's like it's also like it becomes a race issue pretty early on.
It does.
Because it's almost like, oh hey, look at what's on the screen. Let me just repeat this. Although we'll get more into Mickey's philosophy of that, but like later on. But basically, if the idea is repeating what's on the screen, then in that sense, it's like who's first to go? Who do they first target? Black people. Like it's almost like trying to make like the sequel and it works, but at the same time, it's like it's very meta, and that's what I like about it. And of course, the first one is meta as well, but like it's something about this one specifically of actually seeing the opening for the original Scream movie more or less on their screen as new deaths that there's enough variation where it's not exactly just life or like life imitating art that imitates life, but it's almost like a contortion of that, and I think that's because there was no race aspect in the first movie as far as I remember, but like now there is because it's being brought once again to life, and it's like it sort of is a contortion in like it's not quite a repetition, but it's a contortion it's a distortion, distorted reality, in the sense that where they bring it becomes something that it never was before, and that's what I find interesting about it. Does that make any sense? I'll definitely develop that
Sort
as I
of.
go on. So
Sort
not
of.
if I forget.
No, I kind of get what you
Um,
mean. And for the record, I do think this is more critical movie than the first one, and also almost like a more fruitful movie, I think. But there's I don't know
There's
where Zach wants to
something.
go.
Well, where I want to go is I want to leave this scene, so we can eventually finish the. If we had a lot to say about that, um, let's just keep it moving. I have no final thoughts on the Jada Pinkett scene. I think that there's just a lingering quality to her death that makes good on playing into the trope because it plays into it in a way that I feel implicates me as a white viewer. But I want to go to the sequel debate now. It's basically, let's see, it's Randy's film theory class, and they're discussing about, they're basically talking about why sequels are by definition inferior films to the original.
Mhm.
which of course is like
Which
the insecure rationalization
yeah,
of the existence of Scream 2. Like, can it
there's a
ever live
large
up to
part
the
of Scream
original?
2 that is like gleefully self-defeating. I do quite like that. But it's basically Mickey and Joshua Jackson from Dawson's Creek arguing that sequels are the better ones or whatever. And then Sarah Michelle Gellar and Jamie Kennedy as Randy debating that sequels are terrible, are god awful. But this is a par for the course discussion for these kinds of movies, especially like Williamson style movies. If it's a sequel, they're going to talk about how it's a sequel. If they're living in a horror movie, they're going to talk about how they're in a horror movie. If it's The Faculty, they're going to talk about like sci-fi writers and like the tropes therein. It's very
Right.
common theme here. But of course,
But it was funny. It was a funny
I know,
scene.
I really like this
I
scene.
I
And
can't decide if I find it like obnoxious or funny. But
No, I found
No.
I found the first movie way more obnoxious than the second one. Honestly, I think the first one may
No.
be better though. No,
I
like
only waver because I've been in like classrooms where this happens, and I'm like,
yeah,
God, can I fucking leave?
it actually seemed like true to life. That scene reminded me of like a scene in like Elephant or something, like where it's like true to life. Like people are just like talking and they're bouncing off ideas, and of course they go with the most basic picks ever,
Yeah.
Godfather 2, and then they quote
most-
Godfather 1.
And it's also one of the biggest hints that like Mickey is the killer. Like in retrospect, it's like one of the
Yeah, yeah.
because he's definitely on the
bit.
side of the sequel.
Mhm.
And Sarah Michelle Gellar wasn't even supposed to be in this scene. Her only scene originally was just her death, which we're about to get into. But Kevin
So
and
funny.
Wes both thought that like we need to spend at least a little
Which-
bit more with her.
Well, what's the story with that character? Do you know? Like
I mean, she's just a sorority girl. She's
I would
just
I would argue she has very little purpose in the overall narrative.
She does.
like-
She's just. I mean, they explain why she had to die. It's because of her name.
It
but
reminds me
that's
of
it.
I Know What You Did Last Summer, in that
not-
like there's just
we'll
like
get to that.
extra kills.
Yeah, but we'll get to the scene later. But did you disregard Randy's rules of the sequel? The body count's always bigger. That's it. Boom. Dead.
True, and that's
Easy.
when she's introduced. Yeah, that makes sense.
And again, they just explained that she had to die just because of her name. Like that's it.
Which I don't know how much like that's just such a weird, but that I think
It
it's a
never
flaw
comes
with
back
film,
up, yeah.
But like you can argue that that's a flaw for me. Of like, yeah, but I don't think they ever follow through on that.
They don't. They don't.
fine.
I mean, I'm literally willing to just take that to mean Mickey doesn't give a fuck and he's just fucking with people and like, he thought it would be funny and like make people like, try to attach psychology to him or a motive to him that isn't there. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, like Mickey is like so Joker mode that you can literally just like he could do anything to the movie and you can explain it away as like, who cares? Mickey's crazy. Like he doesn't give a
Yeah.
shit. Like he just does whatever he feels like. There's no like motive to it. But
We're getting closer to them. Anything anyone wants to say about Sarah Michelle Gellar's death? I just want to say I liked it quite a bit. I love the deaths that involve Ghostface on the phone actually talking to
Yeah,
the
I thought it
people
was
beforehand.
obviously all the deaths were good. Honestly, I quite like them.
Also, Sarah Michelle Cece's friend on the phone is actually Selma Blair, which is fun.
really,
Oh, really?
that's
Yeah.
fun.
Very
That's
cool.
fun. That's fun.
And
No,
I love when Ghostface does throw her off the ledge, like it hits into I think an Everclear
Ugh.
song, going like, "I never said I was innocent. I
Oh,
was burning hell
yeah.
for the
The
things
needle
I've done to
drops.
you."
The needle drops in this movie. They're so good. I
They
love
really
them.
are.
the Nick Cave.
Yeah, and at this point,
The Red Right
that's
Hand.
not the last time we'll hear the same Nick Cave song. I do think Red Right Hand is in every Scream movie. I do think it is, which is awesome. But yeah, it's just a good little death there.
I also liked how she had to stay inside the house while she's on the phone.
Yeah.
And
Also, just like not just speaking overall, Sarah Michelle Gellar is awesome. Adds so much to even a small role. She was really.
Oh,
cool
she's
to
always
see here.
wonderful.
Yeah,
I
yeah. I
love
want
Sarah
to say
Michelle
like
Gellar.
might have been an unimportant character, but since it's Sarah Michelle Gellar, like I will never forget her.
Yeah.
Very good job. And of course, nice seeing another Williamson alum here because she was incredible in I Know What You Did Last Summer. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see
She's like
Williamson
the
killer
best
twice.
part of that film
Yeah.
by
I
far.
don't know
Williamson
about
just
that.
wants to
I don't know about
murder her.
that, but she's quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Williamson just likes to murder her. But then we get to the rules of a sequel. No, actually, I want to talk about the "I Think I Love You" scene. Actually,
I love that scene. It's really fun.
Oh,
love it.
It's actually that's kind of an example of like I think one weird thing about this movie, and I can't decide if it works to its detriment or not. Because I think like this is a movie that's like really pessimistic by its conclusion and really hopeless, but it also just really loves its characters. And I say that like more than the first movie does, because I think the first one like really
Well, it's just
I think the first one like really likes its characters, but I think like this one like cares about its characters almost to a fault because there's almost like a friction between loving a character and then simultaneously wanting them to suffer and die in like the worst way because you have to. It's pretty weird. But
and honestly, that actually made the deaths a little more unpredictable.
yeah,
For me. I mean, I didn't really follow. I don't really know much about the Scream series in general. I didn't know if Sarah Michelle Gellar was going to be in more or not. And she died. Like, oh, okay, I guess she's died. Later on, I thought, oh, okay, I guess Dewey's dead. Yeah, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, what
That's one of
Zach
the
wanted to
things
say
that-
about this, I just went on that because I thought it was like a really like emotional moment
because
or
like what
yeah.
you're on is like one of the things I think that separates like a Kevin Williamson script from some of the other postmodern stuff. It's very easy to be nihilistic when you're postmodern. Just look at Joss Whedon, who we talked about earlier. Like
It's
that,
kind of
Yeah.
like implicitly nihilistic in a way.
yeah, but with Kevin Williamson, at least there's still like that sentimentality, that sincerity coming through, and you can see it in scenes like this one where Derek, played pretty wonderfully by Jerry O'Connell, is singing "I Think I Love You" in a crowded cafeteria to his girlfriend. It's very much within the Williamson vein still. This is a guy who writes Dawson's Creek for a living. Like it's a very sentimental moment in the middle of all of this self-awareness. You have a scene that is like just kind of true and tender, and it also adds to me, it's the last time we see Mickey too before he's revealed as the killer, and like that is such a betrayal to me because he's his hype man for that whole scene. He's like filming it and he's like doing little
Yeah.
dance and he's like down with his boy. I'm like, oh, Mickey, you're gonna like fucking shoot this guy in an hour. Like,
It's-
God, that's hurtful. Because
It's actually funny,
like you say, like he likes to
Interrogate. Like,
Yeah, he likes to torture the characters that he loves most. And I think Scream was a pretty early script for him. I think Scream is a better movie because I think it has more in common with your run-of-the-mill like horror movie. By this point, like just a year after Scream,
well,
Williams had already created like a new fucking like
well,
movie.
Yeah, because like the bit of of like the boyfriend's whole character is that he's like he's a red herring, but he can't be a red herring because it's obvious that he's a red herring, but then you know that, so he might still
well,
be a red herring.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it's kind of like, towards the end, it's like, oh, is he the killer or is he not? Is he or is he not? And it's like, well, that's what I'm wondering the whole time. I'm like, are they just going to repeat what they did before, or are they going to twist that around? And I wasn't sure. It was kind of like a coin toss.
It's a real like I've called the Scream formula like basically just Scooby Dooism, but it's really funny because it almost becomes like post Scooby Dooism because like the bit is like they don't even have to make a character suspicious. They're just implicitly suspicious because you've seen Scream 1, and so you know like the motions of the movie,
Yeah.
and so which is why it's even more reflexive in that way because it doesn't even have to set up a character arc for you. The character arc is just like implicit.
Right.
It's kind of annoying, but I'm also like, God, it works. It's
And
really funny.
like while I've seen Williamson do like hyper romantic things like that in this kind of setting with these kind of like postmodern flourishes, I've seen him do that like a million times. I've never seen Wes Craven really do something I thought was just so romantic, like so
There's some
tender.
gestures in Nightmare on
Some
Elm
gestures,
Street,
but this is a
but
musical. Like he has like a
yeah,
crane shot and stuff.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he
I
really
mean,
like took hold of this scene and was like, I won't have an opportunity to do this again. Like this is
yeah,
my musical moment.
yeah, for the record, Wes like for years wanted to make Wes had a heart of gold, and he for years wanted to make a musical and I think a comedy as well. He never got the chance to because no one gave him money for it, but
Well,
he wanted to
maybe
for
that's
years. So
this
I
scene
think
does
that
feel
played a
so.
part.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I think that played a
Williamson
part
always
in
says
it.
that like Craven elevates his stuff, and we can see it just by comparing the other films that he's written that didn't have
Oh
Craven
yeah, I
direct.
think this is
Craven
like
really elevates every part of this movie, but that scene in particular, it could. I'm just imagining reading it, and it just doesn't work. But Craven made it. It's like, yeah, imagine reading that, and you're like, okay, Kevin, I get that you're good, but this is just the Partridge Family song. Like, I don't understand why we're doing this. It was beautiful, though, beautifully done. Now I do want to talk about the rules of the sequel.
mhm.
Um, it's Randy who we can merge this. No, we can't. We have something else to do before Randy goes. But Randy is a fucking amazing character, in my opinion. I love this movie is essentially about cinephiles killing their friends and other cinephiles.
Yeah.
But Randy gave us the rules of how to survive a horror movie the first time around, so he's back to tell Dewey, everyone's favorite character, right, about the rules of the sequel. After he watches Tori Spelling and Luke Wilson act out a scene in Stab.
Oh yeah.
Like
I
that would do
love
anything
that.
to see Luke Wilson play Billy Loomis. That's amazing.
That's such a good joke. It's
It's
such a
so
good. It's like the Austin Powers bit where Tom Cruise plays Austin.
rule number one: the body count's always bigger. But like Carnage Candy, more blood, more gore. Your core audience just expects it. He only gets to do like 2 rules of a sequel, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's honestly it.
Yeah, that's all you need.
I mean, I
But then
think
we
the
get like a
implication of the third is that like you either don't kill your protagonist
yeah,
or leave
because
the
right before he
opportunity
gets
for a killer.
cut off, he's like, and if you want your sequel to become a franchise, never ever, and then he gets cut off by Dewey. So it was definitely going to be that.
Yeah, I take that to be like Nev is just always going to survive these movies. And I say Nev specifically instead of Sydney. Like Nev will be forced to
Mhm.
do these movies forever. But
And then we get a bit of a throwback to one of my favorite scenes from the first Scream movie. One of my favorite scenes from the first Scream movie is when both Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich are like taunting Randy at the fucking video store, and Randy
yeah,
is
I
like
remember that
pushed
bit.
to scream that everyone's a suspect or whatever. Like it's such a crazy scene. Like they're both like over it, like his shoulder and like taunting the fuck out of him.
Mhm.
But he gets to do that here basically and runs down the list. But I love that like it's Mickey, the freaky Tarantino film student. I'm like, you're right though, Kevin. You're right
I've
about the
literally like
fucking Tarantino film student.
I've literally known people like Mickey. Like it's I've worked with people like Mickey. Like it's
That's scary.
some of the realest shit ever. Like Mickey's insane. Like
And
I love him
what's
though.
up
God
with that
love him.
limp anyway? You got stabbed in the back. I don't get what you're doing. No, Randy is great. Randy's great. You know what? Why don't we just talk about Randy dying then? Because he is next.
Well,
Yeah, it's probably the most like shocking move this movie makes because he's something of like a mascot for it now, almost more than Ghostface.
Yeah,
Like,
he's one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite deaths, not because of the visceral death itself, but I love the conversation beforehand and the things that this archetype is like pushed through. Well, first of all, they're sitting around on a bench, and we get one of my favorite Dewey lines. So I think Dewey is very funny in this movie. Gale calls him a bonehead, so then Gale's phone keeps ringing. So then Dewey, fucking master of wit, goes, "I don't know, phone head." And I'm like, Dewey, that is so witty. That's so charming. But then Randy ends up picking up the phone and it's cool. Cinephile v cinephile. This is fun. But especially the part where his archetype is challenged, humiliated, and belittled before he's murdered, when Ghostface is saying, like, why are you even here, Randy? Like, you'll never be a leading man and you'll never ever get the girl, which gets to Jamie Kennedy's perfect delivery of fuck you. Because like he knows his place. If anyone's meta like as fuck, like as a real person, it's Randy. Like Randy knows, but like he shouldn't live through this. He wasn't supposed to live through the first one.
yeah, I saw the thing where Jamie Kennedy was talking about it, right? And he was like, honestly, I didn't even know if I was going to be in the second one. Like it was very up in the air. Like
So
he had
happy
no
they brought
idea.
him back. This is the most like Jacob always points out to like the traumatic deaths in these movies, and this is the one for me. Like this guy,
like an actual like good, pretty decent guy who has like some pretty sad backstory, and that like his whole character is that he's just like hopelessly in love with Neb
well, yeah,
Campbell.
and that's
But
also he's like the sequel that should have like the nerd fall in love with
But it doesn't.
or the final girl fall in love with the nerd. And it just happens.
No, he just dies for nothing.
Oh,
I mean,
so
it's another case of like playing into the trope in a way that implicates like the audience, or it feels like it has to happen, but then it feels like so like Scream 1 diverted more tropes than this one did. Like,
yeah,
which I think is its own like kind of reflective element, is that
like it's a painful scene to watch, and not like when he gets pulled into the car and then like immediately like 3 fucking dudes with a boombox walk by listening to I think a Cottonmouth King cover of Big A Little A. The system might got you, but it won't get me. Fucking Crass cover. Yeah. I'm like, what is the significance here? I will refuse to engage with whatever that means, guys.
It's just Cotton. It's a reference to Cotton, the character.
And as it's revealed, like this is the only death like we definitely know who did. It was Mrs. Loomis who killed Randy.
Yeah.
Well,
because like, but Randy like brings subtext into the forefront. I love it because he's like, Stu was a pussy ass wet rat, and Billy Loomis was a homo repressed mama's boy. Like,
which
and that's like
yeah, I do like the whole like Freudian aspect of this movie. It's pretty great.
Yes. We'll get to that. I also liked how Randy died in the back of Gale's van when it very well could have easily been the one guy, the cameraman.
Yeah, the cameraman. Like, he's another big red herring.
Yeah, because he was like, I don't want to die. This is messed up. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up for this like 9 times.
Yeah, he's like definitely set up as. Yeah, he's definitely set up as much of a red herring as her boyfriend. But,
he doesn't die.
Yeah, and he doesn't die. No, he gets away.
He doesn't even come back for like some kind of like like triumphant moment or something. He just leaves.
No.
It was funny.
It is funny how.
That's positive representation of people of color.
Well, yeah, I think that's also kind of.
Just left.
Yeah, he was like, this is dumb.
I think maybe with him, they were kind of trying to argue was like, yeah, but if we have more Black people in horror movies, we're just going to be killing them off more, and maybe that's bad.
So they just have him leave the movie.
Yeah, I think that's the idea.
I mean, it's a little too little, too late when Jada died.
Well, then there's also the one girl that was in it. Sydney's
but
friend.
we're getting her in a minute.
Yes.
Or two.
But that's another.
I do like when Randy says like maybe it's Hallie, and Dewey's like, oh, most serial killers are typically white male. That's why it's perfect. It breaks the rules, but not really. Candyman's daughter. He gets to be blatantly racist.
Yeah, I watched that. I was like, "Whoa, Randy!" Like that's the part of this that I was like,
What do
that
you
is
expect? He's a film
actually
bro
like,
cinephile, dude. He's a film bro cinephile. I love
yeah,
the
I've never
kid.
met a cinephile that wasn't racist, but
Yeah, right. Like I get
it's
Randy.
like,
He's fine. He's harmless, as Hallie says when Mickey says, "Isn't Randy a killer?" Like
well,
Mickey's like
I
the
think
inverse
the
of Randy.
conclusion.
Mickey is like the dark version of this cinephile fucking personality. I love it, actually.
Yeah, I would say
But
he's less innocent than we're giving him credit for. I think that's kind of the conclusion of the movie. But yeah,
yeah, but I
definitely.
do love this scene, like seeing Randy go like this, and I had like you build a good bond with him on the first movie because like everyone's. I mean, if Williamson didn't love his characters, he wouldn't let like 5 live each movie. It's a ridiculous amount of people
Well,
alive.
yeah, and each one that died, I was like, are they gonna die? I didn't realize they're gonna die. Of course,
Yeah.
Dewey
Yeah.
had to live.
That's the hardest part of this movie is getting through the Randy death scene because I'm like, man, this guy brought so much.
I didn't expect it.
They almost set him up as like the new like hero to some extent, or like they set it
Well,
up like he's gonna have his Dewey moment, but then he
Well,
never
it
has his
does
Dewey
focus on
moment.
him quite a bit when he's like
That's what
having
I
to stand
mean.
there while like Derek makes out with his dream girl. And he's like,
He gets like quite a lot of screen time and like
Yeah.
development through the first half, so it really sets him up as like a central character in it. So it does play it up like the bit is gonna be that the nerd is the hero. It's like they're fake foreshadowing, but no,
well,
it just
well,
gets
that's kind
capped.
of the idea. They keep constructing like these archetypes and then trying to subvert
They
them.
keep
But then
get-
not always. You don't know when it's gonna be subverted, when time they're gonna do it, because when they do it, it's just like, oh, okay, it makes sense because it's a horror movie and it's self-referential. But then when they don't do it, it's like, well, it's because it's like commentary. I don't know. It's a weird construction behind it.
What it
I
is
love
that
it.
like film students love to like or like cinephiles love to like, you know, masturbate to Chekhov's guns and like foreshadowing and shit. But like this kind of riffs on that because it gives you like 50 guns, like 50 Chekhov's guns, and then only actually follows through on like half of them.
But
The most
on
easily
purpose.
available gun, though, like the
But when
most
you-
used gun.
Yeah.
When you look at it as like unreliable tropes, it's almost
Yeah.
like once you recognize that, you can still parse together what's actually being foreshadowed. It's interesting.
It's just
To an extent, I didn't the first time I watched it, but the second time I can kind of see.
Well,
it's
I've only
a bit better.
seen it once, and I'm telling you
Yeah.
that
I felt
it's
for the
brilliant,
bits
man.
a lot.
when Randy picks up that phone and immediately Ghostface is like, have you ever felt a knife like enter into your body and like scrape the bone beneath? And like Jamie Kennedy fucking is a much better actor than his career or he or anyone would give him credit for. That scene is so well done on his end. And when the cinephile asks the cinephile serial killer, what's your favorite scary movie, back to him, I'm like, okay, man, we're in for a blast. Because they only do in Scream 4, like they call a cinephile again, and they have like a conversation reminiscent of this one. Good God, I love that Randy death scene. I'm like kind of nerding out over here because it's like perfect. Like, he's right at hour into the movie. It's awesome. It's just awesome. Jamie Kennedy was awesome. Randy was a great Scream character, and fuck, man, this is like the one death that actually makes me sad in the movie. The rest of I'm fine with, honestly.
Yeah.
This
I think
one
I
is the
agree
one
with
that's
that.
like, oh fuck, that's like the good part of me dying. Now I'm just with Mickey now. But meanwhile, Sydney is getting accosted in the library by a character I think we should take some time and talk about.
Liev Schreiber.
Liev Schreiber, who was in the first Scream for like 2 seconds on a
Yeah,
I was gonna say,
ask Zach about that.
because I watched the first movie and I was like, but again, I watched the first movie maybe 3 or 4 years before I watched Scream 2. So
Okay.
I watched Scream 2. I'm like, maybe I'm just stupid, but like, I don't remember you. Like, I feel like I'm forgetting like a major plot line of the movie. And I asked someone about it, and they're like, no, he's just not really in the first movie. They just don't follow up on it.
Well, he's mentioned a couple times in the first movie. Like that's part of Gail's trying to like redeem him, right? Like
Exactly.
Yeah.
but
something like that.
Gail's like, I know that Cotton did not kill your mother. I know you got the wrong person. God, Billy was so fucked up. He's not crazy. Mickey is not crazier than Billy. Billy fucking murdered her mom. And oh my God, no. Whoa. That's some crazy shit that Billy pulled in the first movie. But yeah, Cotton here is a complete piece of shit. No.
Yeah, I actually think kind of is like a pretty interesting character. I don't want to
Oh
like
no, great character,
Well,
but
he's
like,
another red herring.
well, he's
Yeah.
a red herring, but I also, and I don't want to like jump the gun too much on like my thesis for this movie, but I also think he's also like in a more positive sense, like the movie's defense of movies. Like I think he's like a stand-in for movies themselves because he's like the bad guy, but then he's kind of like his whole thing is that he just wants to be proven innocent after having been proved innocent. Like he's like just made the bad guy
okay,
after his innocence was already
no, I
proven.
see
So
where
there's a
you're
lot of
going.
I see where you're
yeah,
Gonna
going.
like
end up,
I think that's the ultimate thesis of the movie is that the movie is saying like
I think
movies
that's
are
the
to blame, but
thesis
it's not.
too, but I think Mickey's argument is just stronger than anything
Yeah,
that Gale misses
I'm
the use of
anti
time.
Mickey, but
I'm well, who's pro Mickey? If you're pro Mickey, you're pro like
well,
Eric
okay, I'm
Villain,
pro
like,
Mickey because Mickey rules, but like
yeah.
I the movie Innocent is my
We'll
ultimate
get to them
takeaway.
soon. I just
Yeah,
without jumping the gun on the ending too much, Cotton Weary would have let Sydney die if she didn't agree to a Diane Sawyer interview.
yeah,
Like,
it's so
what the
great.
fuck?
He's such a slimy asshole. It's great.
But
I really
Liev
like his
Schreiber is
character.
great. He's great in the film. He's a cool little character actor guy. And I think there's no better time than to talk about Dewey and Gale, since Dewey is technically the next like fake out death. So
Do we? Yeah.
Okay, can I get
I don't
started
know.
here?
Do you not
um
like Dewey? Do you have
I know
like a
that
thing
Dewey's
to
your
talk
favorite
about?
character, Justin. Dewey's your favorite.
Absolutely. I hate Dewey. Like I like okay, I know people will always say like Jar Jar Binks is one of the most annoying characters in film. No, Dewey is so annoying every time he's on screen. This is more so the case with the first movie. He has like this weird theme song specific to Dewey.
I
It's
love
so
the theme.
annoying. No. How dare Craven and Williamson think, oh, let's kill off Dewey? I'm like, yes, finally. But no, he has to come back in the end because they just like him too much. They insist upon him. He's just this annoying cop. It's like he sort of has a personality. He doesn't exactly have a personality. He's so annoying. And his little mustache, just want to punch him. I don't like him.
I love it. In his introduction, they're like, "Who's that?" By the shade of the
No,
tree.
when I saw that, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah,
No,
it's this
no, you
who's that
don't.
mystery man?
No,
Who's that
it's like
mystery
I'm
man?
cool with Gail being there. I'm cool with everybody kind of reuniting, like but then like he shows up, I'm like, oh no.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, first of all, I just think that Dewey is hilarious. Like,
No.
can you give me a smile, Dewey? I'll smile when I catch the killer. Like, who the fuck?
I will
The
admit
comedy's brilliant.
I will admit I liked him more in this movie.
And you have to admit, it is still like a really cool, novel, and spontaneous thing when you actually do film, like, over the years of Scream, like you film the initial relationship between David Arquette and Courtney Cox, and then a marriage, and then a divorce, and then a rekindling. Like, it's wild to watch in real time too. Like, if there's anything that film can do, it's document actual passion. And I do feel the actual chemistry between these two actual lovebirds. I think it's really nice.
Yeah, I think like the best scenes with Dewey are definitely the ones that also have Gale on them.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
beyond that, he's like so insufferable to me. I just really, really hate Dewey.
What about Gale? Gale is fucking awesome. I think.
Yeah, I like Gale more.
Gonna,
I think I like Gale more in this one actually.
And awkwardly, if I was forced to thirst over anybody in this movie, Courtney Cox was hot in this movie. You guys.
Yeah, I would say more so this time around. Sydney, not so much.
Yeah.
That was the weirdest statement I've ever heard.
Which one?
Just Justin like stroking their chin, going, "She may have gone hotter. I don't know."
No, I like it. I finally get agreement.
But no, I mean, no,
I
I
have, like,
I
so
little. No, but I'll tell you what, Sydney. I don't know. Listen, okay, I'm just gonna get into this. I said this on Twitter, so I can say it here. I think. Why? Okay, it's this like. At most, it was like 2 years between one was filmed and the other one was filmed. At most, but it's probably it's probably within a year. What happened? They all look like 5 or 6 years older. What happened?
Well, you see, the character experienced quite a bit of trauma over the last year as well. She gets to come back darker, edgier, more.
Is that true? Is that true?
That's true. Like, did you see Scream?
No, I saw Scream, but here's the thing. Here's the thing is that And it's not just okay. You're saying that everybody looks like they aged a decade because, but it's just been a year. I'm not just talking about the characters though. I'm talking about the actors. The actors are so much older. What happened? All of them. This is
only
from
like
1996 to 1997. What happened?
I don't know.
No,
Maybe
just tell
Kim
me.
grew a goatee.
Ju-
Like nothing happened.
Justin
was-
is getting like is so heated about things that I have absolutely no opinion about in this movie.
No, and listen. This is ultimately reductive, and it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But tell me this: why did they? Okay, Sydney, her hair in the first movie is like so much better. Like
Okay,
she
I
had,
will
like, these
tell
nice
you why,
bangs.
and I will tell you exactly why, and then Jacob and I can nerd out for like 2 seconds. Her hair is this much shorter and is like this, so that it can juxtapose perfectly against Rebecca Gayheart and Portia de Rossi's long, like flowing, like normie fucking sorority
Oh
girl.
yeah, she's so great. I love seeing her.
Hey, I can see that
Yeah.
argument, but at the same time, her bangs were just so good in the first.
They
movie.
didn't do enough with her in this movie, like they did in
No,
Urban
but
Legend.
this was like her first one. This is pre-Urban
Yeah.
Legend. This is like she is just the Noxema girl at this point.
Yeah.
Like Rebecca
Yeah, I
Gayheart, supremacy, we love
Rebecca
her.
Gayheart is the
Thematically,
the
I get it.
Randy of Urban
But, hey,
Legend.
Listen, thematically, I get it, but I was yearning for what was available in the first movie. Except Dewey, I'll tell you this: Dewey had to look better now. He's cuter. Credit where credit's due. I hate Dewey, but I just credit where credit's due. His death's pretty cool. Like, no, it's not his death.
No,
He had
that's
to
a
come back.
great run.
And,
That's a great run through the media room.
I have once
okay,
again
I'll tell you,
no
one of the best
opinion
scenes
on
in my
Dewey.
opinion actually involves Dewey, oddly enough, and it's a scene where like he is looking over the footage with Gail, when he's like, "Oh yeah, I was being an asshole." That was so good. And then like then they kind of rekindle like what they once had, you know. And
I mean-
it was cool. It was cool. And then when they were like separated between like the glass barrier and like he gets stabbed, and you thought, and for a moment you think. I'm thinking, oh, this movie is better than the first one because Dewey's dying. And then as it goes on, he comes back and he's like still alive on that little gurney. And what happens? That song kicks back in. You know what I'm talking about.
You see, Jacob, violence is happening behind a screen, but it's still real,
It's true.
right?
Yes.
It's true.
It's true.
The only part. The only part of that scene that's weird to me is that I thought Dewey was right about everything he said about Gail, and I'm like, well, don't roll over, bitch. Come on.
Well,
like, that's my whole. Like Gail's a bitch. I don't know what to tell you.
I think he's supposed to be right. He's supposed to be right, but the issue was that he was rude. It's about optics in that sense.
I don't know. Again, I have so little to say about Dewey.
Well,
the Dewey Gail side of the story.
You can trash talk Dewey.
I just don't have much opinion of Dewey.
He's a cop.
Dewey and I are both attracted to girl boss bitches, man. Like,
yeah, girl boss Gail.
I guess if you can like sort of sympathize with Dewey on like you have some things in common. I get that. But like as a character, he's so insufferable. But yeah,
I sympathize with Dewey because he's like as much of a fuck up as these killers are. Like he's terrible as a cop.
Yeah.
He's terrible as everything that he does.
My favorite
something
bit.
so endearing about him. He doesn't belong.
My favorite bit about the killers in Scream is just how utterly inept they are every fucking step of the way. Like in the part when
they still kill people.
Like, yeah, but like the part at the party, like Ghostface, like after the party, like when he goes after Nev, like literally like tripping over chairs, like walking into a chair and rolling over it, like.
After that scene, like she and Mickey have a really cool scene. I think everybody forgets about.
Yeah, I know what you mean. At the hospital, right?
Yeah, it's
where he tries to he kind of like without her realizing it is like leading her on to suspect her boyfriend.
Exactly. Yeah. Who would go back in that house anyway?
Yeah,
that's
really
good.
We're about to get to him. He did so good. Okay.
Yeah.
First, you have to talk about Hallie and the two cops. Hallie played wonderfully by Elise Neal. I wish I had more to say about her, but she doesn't have too much interiority or things to do, and yet she's in it for more than most of these people.
Yeah, she's mostly just like the hype girl for Nev for like most of the movie.
Yeah, but that scene is so intense where like Ghostface crashes the car after killing the two cops, and they both have to crawl over him.
Well, also they couldn't get out because it's a cop car. They had to like break the bars. It was so good. But
and Elise Neal did wonderfully. This isn't saying anything against her like natural likability. Hallie's a very like naturally likable character. I just wish I don't know. I do like the way she flirted with Mickey a few times. And once again, in Williamson Way, we know that Mickey killed Hallie too, because he was the one who was chasing them down. Meanwhile, Gail and Mrs. Loomis had the other thing. It's always about the guy who wants to fuck you that's gonna kill you, according to Scream movies. Always.
Well, but a lot of people wanted, a lot of people want to have sex with each other though, and throughout the movies, Who
Yeah,
didn't
but
wanna-
this movie also suggests that everyone is evil. So
Yes.
But
But okay, no, actually, Hallie
don't
had a
know.
really good put down of Mickey at that frat party when Mickey goes up to her and he's like, "Hey, you want to dance?" And she's like, "Yes, I do." With that 6 foot tall, hunky frat boy over
Yeah.
there, and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh, good for
it's a
you.
good
He's
line.
gonna stab you in the chest and kill you."
yeah,
So it did it, girl.
it's true.
So let me preface this this ending, which we will spend some time on. With I had to look up what play they were doing earlier. It's called
Yeah.
Agamemnon, and apparently it's an ancient Greek tragedy. And Sydney was playing the role of Cassandra. And I suppose in the play she's like a concubine of somebody from Troy, some convoluted like old ancient bullshit. But she knows if she goes back inside this palace, she's going to be executed for like sleeping with the enemy, and like the villagers want to kill her anyway. And like she keeps having these visions of everyone she knows and loves being murdered because she can't help her passions or something to that effect. So so right away we're getting like the performative quality inherent in like not just horror movies but most teen movies, and Williamson like plays on this a lot. Craven plays on this a lot too since the beginning. But this finale takes place on that same stage with those same effects. With her, I mean, talk about Derek dying really quick, or Derek as a character. We did. He's just a red herring. He comes down.
That's
talks
all
some
he
shit
amounts to.
at,
He's like the Buffy season 4 boyfriend, whatever the fuck his name was.
talk some shit at Buffy, and then Mickey starts to say those lines that just like roll around in my head for days. And his first one is, "Don't you know history repeats itself, Sid?" And then he gets to take off the mask, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Mickey."
It took me a second to remember who he was, to be honest.
Oh, I didn't
A lot
notice
of
him the first
people-
time. I thought he was like a background character the first time I watched it.
I think
Like, I
that's the
didn't really-
idea, but at the same time,
A lot
Yeah,
of
like,
people
I didn't
say that,
really
but I find him
register.
like, I
well,
don't forget him
I
at all.
started, I had to think about it for a moment, like, oh, okay, that's who it was. But I'm like, he took out the mask. I'm like, who? Like, oh, okay.
Before
the
we
first
get into
time I saw
motives,
it-
let's just all say that Timothy Olyphant was great. And
Oh, he ate that shit up. He
Yep.
ate it up.
this was like his first or second film. This is before Go. This is before like anything. Like, and he killed it. Especially
No,
this.
he loves it. He it's like Matthew Lillard in the first movie. Like he's just enjoying it.
He is the stew. He is the stew of this one. But
Okay, it's-
Yeah, he's the
How-
one without a motive. He's just doing it cause
Well, no, he has a motive, I would say.
sort of. It's like a non-motive, but still sort of a motive because he
Well,
just
it's a
wants to
non-motive
basically
that,
create a
like-
spectacle.
Well,
That's all he
yes,
really
but
wants.
I was talking to Zach about this earlier on the phone. I think that you can. I think you can definitely like pinpoint like some like okay, so something about his like philosophy or if to lack of a better word, I think there's definitely some parallels with that in like actual like real world like shooters, at least that
Yes.
have come
Yeah.
since where they divert attention onto something that has nothing to do, or at least it was just tangentially related, if even at all, like the New Zealand shooter that was shooting up mosque. He said subscribe to PewDiePie, and this is the first time I wasn't on Twitter for long before that, and this is the first time I realized that everybody on Twitter is stupid, and they were like they were all blaming like PewDiePie for like some murderer. It's like PewDiePie, he has his issues. He's probably racist, but the thing is like it's obvious that the New Zealand, if you even look at like his manifesto, he was diverting attention away from him and onto other things, onto Donald Trump, onto PewDiePie, and it's all for the sake of sensationalism. It's all for the sake of getting his name out there, but also like in having people kind of be in the frenzy. And unfortunately, I would argue that people who agree with him in the sense where they're like, oh yeah, this person that's completely unrelated is the cause of this, that they are ultimately doing exactly what he wants, and that's what Mickey is doing in this movie. He's wanting to cause a stir where he's going to blame television and film on that I'm going to blame the movies. He's going to blame it on us, where it's like it's nothing to do with it. He's a psychopath, and he
But
may.
it does. Okay, but I can't. Kevin Williamson might think I don't have a good memory, but I remember Billy Loomis saying the words, "You can't
Just about to
blame the
get there.
movies." Okay, go.
You can't blame the movies. What's the line? You know the line.
He's saying this
movies-
line as he's stabbing his fucking like butt buddy in the kitchen. You can't blame the movies. Movies don't make psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
Yes.
Should movies be penalized for that creativity, though?
Well, I would say that Scream is like kind of like, at least Scream 2 is kind of like really tossing it back and forth, like, is this sort of responsible, or does it have potential to be responsible or not? And these are questions, because I think in some ways, undeniably media has influence on people, or at least it kind of like it has to. People get eating disorders because of media, largely. And what's the ideal body, and the same goes. And I think I definitely think that some video games and movies can maybe make, at least not, maybe they're not the source of people's aggression, but they can fuel it, and they can kind of enhance things. Do I think that media can? I think media definitely can influence people, but at the same
that
time,
Williamson does it in a large way. Whenever I say that, people think I'm directly saying that Scream did Columbine. No, not at all. Scream showed cultural attitudes of a group of people.
Yeah, that was yes.
Yeah,
I agree.
And if you don't think that film influences your life, then I'm not really sure what you're doing watching.
Well, if film doesn't influence your life, I don't want to have anything to do with film.
Exactly. I'm not saying it influences you to become a psychopath or anything like that, but I
would argue that school shooters and the likes, serial killers, there's something I feel like they're those people regardless of films and stuff. But I think
even if we move beyond the hyper literal school shooter thing, I think we just think of our lives in cinematic terms sometimes. We treat romances like they're soap operas sometimes, without us even knowing it, because we have cinematic expectations of reality.
Well, yeah.
I'm extrapolating a lot from Mickey's one sentence about I was gonna blame the movies, but that's what Kevin's stuff Williamson's words do to me.
Yes, but I would argue that if not Williamson, at least Craven, there's at least some back and forth of they're not really sure what the answer is, and I think ultimately it's saying that no, he's blaming the movies not because he's actually influenced by the movies, but it's to add to that sensationalism.
It blatantly.
I think arguably it's saying that movies aren't the issue, and I think that's part of the reason. And I'm kind of back and forth on.
It deliberately says that. I just think that Mickey's argument and part of the composition from the first two Scream films are kind of in his favor.
Well, I think at the very least it wants you to have conversations about these kind of things.
Yeah, but then it he blatantly says shh, don't tell anyone I'm a psychopath, and the Christian Coalition are gonna pay my legal fees, all this awesome shit. And of course then the final killer is Mrs. Loomis, and it's madness or stuff, that kind of violence starts.
It goes back to the whole Oedipal, Oedipal and
Oedipal thing, but I think that's more to do with parents take care of your fucking kids, movies aren't raising them.
I feel like my ultimate take on the thesis of the film is kind of Oedipal, but it's that the movies, or maybe more broadly art, are the child, and we're the parents that fucked up. I think this is more a movie than anything about we killed art. Art is dead because we killed it. Art doesn't make us bad. We made art bad, and we killed art with a fucking chainsaw. And,
they even mentioned, you could say that sequels are part of the problem.
I say this because I feel and this might be defensive of me, but I also don't think it's really defensive, because I think it's more, I think there's been kind of this diversionary thing where people are kind of becoming maybe this is a postmodern thing, a 21st century specifically postmodern thing, where people are kind of semi-ironically, semi-seriously anti-art, anti-film, for a multitude of reasons that are understandable. Film is a corporate thing. Film requires, millions of dollars worth of resources that they just throw away for nothing. It's, this evil thing, but I'm that's, I think we made it that way in a way, like if that makes
Well,
sense.
I think
Like
I think
I think
corporations just
Jacob's
co-opt
absolutely right
everything.
about this. And I mean, I'm one of those fucking like people who does
yeah,
exactly what
that's
why I
you're
why
smile.
saying.
I didn't know you well enough at the time, but like I watched your original video on that. I was like, I disagree only insofar as like my ultimate take is like if say like the cinema is a diseased beast, we are the one that like we should not put it down. Is kind of maybe it's because like I don't know I the philosophers I like
Maybe well maybe
I
you just
don't I believe in like braving the flames, you know, like I believe in like if
well
film
maybe
is a
you're
diseased
just
animal, let it live.
maybe you just
Like
have kind of like some catharsis that comes from it and you just can't let it go though. And
it's it
maybe you're telling
no,
yourself, I mean it's the same
I
reason I
wouldn't
think
call it catharsis
You're
because
like
I
I
that
feel pretty
dog. You're
shitty.
like you're like that dog in that meme. Like everything's fine, dog. And
I
No,
mean
it's not
everything's
quite
fine.
that. It's I would say it's more, and I actually think Sydney is a pretty good case in what I mean is that it's more being the dog in the fire and saying, wow, everything is horrible, and then like going on anyway, because like that's Sydney's ultimate endpoint. Is like
Hmm.
Sydney's life is horrible. Like horrible. And like the worst part of it is that her existing makes other people's lives bad, but like she just lives in like that. I feel like the ultimate endpoint, and I think this is kind of Wes and Kevin Williamson's like optimism is they're like, no, that's true, but she's alive, you know, like it's like at least she's alive, you
well
know.
well
So
I was
I think
kind
like
of I was
well
kind
before I done like I just want to say like I feel like the point is that like it's like yeah, film is like a or like film art whatever mass popular art is a diseased animal, but it's not dead yet, you know, like that's kind of the
I don't know if I entirely agree with that reading. I mean, I agree with it in some sense, but I just don't know if that's exactly
yeah.
what Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson are doing here. I would argue
I'm
that
mixed on that.
I
I'm
would
mixed
argue
on
that
that.
it's almost like apologetic for a film, where it's like you
Yeah.
like you actually shouldn't blame the movies. But there's some responsibility that's tied to film. But ultimately, the issue is not in the sense that it's not like film creating like serial killers like co-opting film. And that's why I thought it was really cool that at the end, like the things that were like killing, like Miss like or Mrs.
It's a
Loomis,
stage. It's
it's
literally a
well, it's not on stage,
performance.
but
Yeah.
it's like the cameras and like you actually see like this pillar crumble. It's like literally like the pillars of like of artifice is what's killing them. And I find that very like kind of poetic in a way.
Oh no, it is.
I,
I don't know if a lot of people have caught on that or not, but I thought it was
No,
very
I
interesting.
thought about that too. And I
Um,
would just say like
but it's because
I don't think it's overly like sympathetic just because I think the point of such a comment is that it's like the film saying take fucking responsibility, you
well, I
know?
don't.
Like
I think that's ultimately what it's doing with parents. Like parents should be the ones that take responsibility because
Yeah.
she abandoned Billy. She
yeah,
abandoned Billy.
that's why I use like the Oedipal analogy.
Yeah, but she
Um
abandoned Billy, and then then like, but I think ultimately the issue and I'm not saying I don't. I'm kind of mixed, and I feel like it's probably somewhere in between. Um, but I think like I think think Mickey. I don't think we're ultimately are supposed to agree with Mickey.
No, we're
Is
not.
what.
We're not.
no.
But
No, it's
Mickey's really
that's
hot.
abundantly clear, especially because he's like a joke. He just dies immediately after. And we're
Well,
like, that
I
was
don't know.
fucking
I want to.
stupid.
Well,
Like,
yes, but
what were you saying, Zach?
yes, but a lot of the
No,
film
no.
hinges on.
I said yes, but here's the thing: Mickey's hot, and
Yeah, Timothy All. No, I mean
but
like it does make a
like,
joke of
he's saying
him.
that cinephile shit that like gets my brain going because I'm one of those people who thinks that film is a disease and like we should probably stop. And then I got somebody in front of me being like, I'm going to blame the movies. Obviously, what Williamson and Craven are deliberately saying is that you can't blame the movies. That I mean,
Yeah,
interesting.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
But
I don't think it's a binary because I think they're saying
I'm
like
not
film
finding
is
it.
like explicitly political, you know, which is like a lot
but
of the film bro types argue
I
otherwise.
like entertaining this notion, especially like I mean, if the Columbine vibes weren't there with Billy and Stu, like holy shit, Mickey. Like how did it foresee all this fucking shit? Like
Well, yeah.
immediately.
Also, like these are the exact conversations that people were having afterwards.
Yeah,
Like,
in 2 years they'd be having these conversations with actual weight and gravity attached to them, and it's like this was supposed to be in the dialogue for years before.
Also, he like hacks up half a school and they never like close or shut down at any point.
No,
And they have like people that don't go to school there just walking around, and like Liev Schreiber just like can walk into the library. And,
everybody's
like,
the lovable and fucked up Sydney Prescott, everybody's favorite fucking victim. I'm like,
yeah,
Jesus, Cotton,
God,
like,
Sydney's
chill.
life is horrible.
Well, actually,
Yeah,
the one
dude.
thing I'd like to ask you is what you think. Like, do you think Sydney in some ways is selfish, though?
No.
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 Specifically when it comes to the guy that she had in prison for a year.
No, because like, what are you gonna do at that point? Like, she said she was sorry. The real people were gone. Like,
Yeah,
this
but,
is
but,
what's stupid about.
the thing is, and this is what he was saying. He said like he needs like a specific interview in order to really get his name cleared, right?
No, he
They
doesn't. He's
explained
just
that,
being
though.
fame hungry.
Yeah, because they explained that like Liev like literally got like in like a fucking book written that exonerates him. That
And a
is a
film now.
that is seemingly like a cultural phenomenon. He like everyone pretty much knows what happens. The only reason he's like in the public consciousness is his like
So basically,
vague
basically you're saying that he just wants to
association.
be famous in the end. Is all
He's
it is. Like,
you are given no reason to believe that Liev is like poorly off right now.
yeah,
You have no reason to believe like
the
things are
only
bad for
time I was
him.
even thinking that is specifically at the very end, where it's kind of like frames it almost like, okay, fine, I'll do it with you. But it's like, and then she's like, he's the hero, and I feel like that's kind of like with the
I don't know.
television, and
Yeah, but she
I would
looks at
even
him
see
with
the
such
ending as, like-
disdain when she does it.
you
Yeah,
don't
no,
find
no, I don't. I would
You don't
even see
think-
that as Sydney like turning her back on art or on film. Like, go talk to Cotton if you want to like be a hell of a movie.
Yes,
Like,
but
Sydney wants nothing
honestly,
to do with that.
You know what I find interesting? I was thinking about this a little bit when I was watching the movie, and then kind of in retrospect with Scream One, or just Scream rather. I think in some ways it's sort of also about like in some ways like kind of like media coverage specifically with television trying to catch up with film and like the history of film. Like but it's kind of like all peripheral and it's almost like combating against it. There's like a horror movie and there's also like film like media coverage and that like Gail's like,
Yeah.
like sensationalizing things.
I do think it like presents pop culture and media in general as like a reactive
Yeah.
force.
Yeah.
Which is also why I think it's like sympathetic to movies, because I think it implies that movies are only reacting to things and like trying, you know, like reacting to cultural forces or like, you know,
Well, yeah, and in
forces
that
that are
way,
already
it tries
there.
to answer the question of like, do movies shape culture? Does culture shape movies?
Yeah, because like that's why again, like to use like the like I if like movies are the kid, it's just trying to make its parents happy by giving them what they want.
See, that's
So
a perfect way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how I thought of it, was that like no, like people
Mickey
are just
does say that. I'm
bloodthirsty
just
and
trying to give the
horrible.
audience what they want. Everyone loves a good trial. It's like theater.
They
That's
do, like
they want.
we saw that recently. Like people love that shit. You know,
Hell, we wanted that shit watching the sequel. Good movie, Mickey.
they reference OJ in this too, and like
Mhm.
sure, before he dies, Randy calls OJ, like kind of implies that OJ is in quotes one of the great killers. You know, like he
Yeah.
puts him up with like Ted Bundy and shit. He's like OJ, like OJ was this like exemplar serial murderer, like. But I
Well, we
think
know
they do
Randy
that
was-
on purpose to like put the trial in your head for later.
Yeah.
I think that's like one of their Chekhov things, is like there's a lot of like references that are later kind of made more complex by stuff that happens, but not like the
I
Friends
just love-
references, but
oh
other
my God,
stuff.
so many good moments with the taunting, with like Mickey has like the fucking like knife to his head, and he's like boyfriend killer, boyfriend killer, boyfriend killer. Dude.
Yes, so good.
God,
What are you doing, Tim? And then when like Laurie Metcalf as Billy's mom shows up, that's when, like you said, Mickey's in full Joker mode. Mickey's
that's
like, didn't see it coming, did ya? Like, who
that's
the
a,
fuck
that's
are
actually
you
another
now?
moment of what I mean by like references that were kind of just made in passing, but then later come back, because they talk about Jason Voorhees' mother, who's the killer of the
Yep.
first Friday, and then like she actually looks like Mrs.
Yeah.
Voorhees, like she literally
Yeah.
has the haircut, and so like it's such an off the cuff remark earlier in the movie, but then like they actually have someone that looks like Mrs. Voorhees
Do we want to
as the
say anything?
killer.
We've said a bit about Mrs. Voorhees. I really don't have much else. This Mickey's the one who interests me the most out of the two.
Yeah, because she's like, I don't know, just wants revenge. She argues like her
Yeah,
goals are
my
like
motive
not very
isn't as 90s as Mickey's.
Yeah, that's a good line. But her, I don't know, she's as crazy. She's kind of like
I
Billy
don't know what to
in that
think
like
of
she's
her.
like very clearly insane, but like not as scary as like, or maybe she is, but like as Billy. But like I don't know. There's something like I find frightening about people like Mickey, just because Mickey has no ideology or like
No.
only
Well,
like
no,
a vague
I would.
ideology.
Well, as much as like the New Zealand killer, I think does
Yeah,
like
like
it's
he literally just wants to cause chaos. He just
Well,
wants to
and
wreck
then just
shit.
like
because even though the movie like outright like does not agree with any of Mickey's like a psychopathic babble at the end of the movie, it does make like that 2 minute scene like makes me think about like a million different things.
Yeah,
He gets to have like a 2 minute long motive scene, really. Like it's like maybe 5 lines of dialogue passed back and forth between each other. And whoa, there's a lot for me to think about just from that. Uh, when Williamson
it's
does it, it's a lot more complicated than the derivatives are. Like definitely.
it's the part because like I feel like up until that point the movie had like ideas in like free fall around it, like a million
Mm.
different ideas, and you didn't know which to like attach to as the core concept of the movie. And then that scene happens,
Mhm.
and you're like finally given like a thesis or like
Yes.
something that the movie seems to be wanting to revolve around in some way. Where up until that point it was just like stuff kind of happens. Ears are clogged, but
Oh man, I love this movie. Is there anything else we're forgetting to add or mention? What do we want to talk about?
I hate Dewey.
Dewey's amazing though.
Dewey
Dewey's
sucks.
it was
incredible.
fine.
Dewey is lame. He's a
Dewey's
cop.
awesome.
He's a cop, Jacob.
Yeah, okay, ACAB, but no, put these things in for too long. I also think like Wes Craven is also kind of like a nice guy and he doesn't want to be mean. So I think he does like kind of try to apologize a bit for shit. Like this is kind of why I think he made like why I think like the movies are kind of just a victim of this all take is because that seems like a take like Wes would make just because Wes doesn't want to be like antagonistic, but then it's kind of a tension where like the material he himself is directing and composed is antagonistic, but he was like, but I feel bad. Like I don't know. I feel like he has that kind of energy. I definitely think he does in Nightmare on Elm Street. Because like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of does a thing where like compared to Scream, the characters in like Nightmare on Elm Street are like very sympathetic. Like like compare like look at Billy Loomis and then look at like Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street. Like Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street is like, as I recall, like a pretty nice guy and like a good boyfriend, and then he just dies horribly. And
True.
so yeah, like this is a very different beast. That's why I kind of chalk some of the like characterization to Kevin Williamson over Wes because I don't think Wes would be quite
Well,
so
have you
cruel.
seen have you seen Last House?
And again, even then, he had like fairly humble motives, which are I don't know. I was paid to write a movie that's fucked
Right.
up, and I saw the Bergman movie that seemed pretty fucked up. I guess I'll do that. Like he's never really malicious, He's
Well,
he's always
He
We are
seems
nearing the
quite
end of the
nice.
video, and the audio is starting to get fucked
Yeah,
up a bit.
I think we all. Yeah, it's thanks to Jacob.
Yeah, but Jacob's making some really good points here. I, I do give like authorial credit mostly to Williamson for these movies. 'Cause
Yeah,
like,
but you can't just deny Wes Craven. He really brings something
not.
like very like I think the interesting thing about Wes Craven, this is what I've seen, at least from the films that I've seen from him, he really kind of cares deeply about his characters, even when they're not the most developed. Like he really you really kind of there's a lot of heart to it. And sometimes it makes this movies not as scary as he thinks that they should be, but at the end of the day, like he really does them justice. I think he really does like Kevin Williamson's script justice as well.
I agree. The only reason I give authorial credit to Williamson is that like I mean
The writing.
like all of the writing, but also like I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Faculty, Dawson's Creek has so much more in common with this. Like a lot of reasons why people don't like the Scream films is because they're mostly teen melodrama, like with not a whole lot of emphasis on horrific elements, honestly.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I feel like a lot of horror fans like Scream, and I think that a lot of
They
the people
didn't when
like
it came out. It was called trendy horror for years and years and years.
Well, at least
Like-
now it seems like a lot of horror fans like
Yeah, because
Scream.
now
and-
people like my age grew up with it. Like, talk to
Well-
people 10 years older than me.
well, I think a
I was
lot of people,
actually
yeah.
I was actually thinking about this because I feel like I have seen some horror fans, not a lot, but like a noticeable portion of horror fans don't really seem to like Scream on the grounds that I think they find like kind of the bit that it's built on kind of rote. You know, like the bit of Scream 1 is kind of just
Well-
boiled down to we reference tropes and like that.
Well,
kind of,
actually,
like,
the
well,
thing is, this
I'm
is
saying like it's more than that, but like
well, yeah,
that's
I would,
kind of
I would,
like the
I would say
stigma.
that like a lot of times they're kind of looking at it very superficially, which is ironic because I'm actually not the biggest Scream fan.
Well,
Um,
my
I
thing
am.
on that is that like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
more than the superficial joke, but
Yes.
it does such a good job of doing the superficial joke that I don't really blame anyone for not
Well,
realizing.
that's what they
that there's more
but that's
going
what they
on.
that's what they latch onto, and they don't really even see the more like
No.
complex, like paradoxical, like postmodern aspect to it. And it's what I find very interesting about Scream, and Scream 2 for that matter. But at the same time, I just don't like Dewey.
No,
Dewey is
like
great.
yeah, I just think like it does such a good job at like being self-referential that like I wouldn't blame anyone for like loving the film purely on that merit and at no point thinking to themselves, oh, Columbine, you know, like I don't blame anyone for not going there, but I think like it's to the film's detriment because I think it has a lot to offer, you
I
know.
don't blame anyone either. I just blame the movie.
Blame the movies.
I blame
But-
Dewey.
Okay, do you want that to be like I keep saying it over and over again when I'm about to close it off. Do you want the last thing to be fuck Dewey?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
I'm
say
gonna
it.
blame
Say it.
the-
You can close us off.
Wait,
You
can
can
I
say
say
it.
it?
Have your
Can I
moment.
say it?
You can say it.
I'm gonna blame the Deweys.
Oh,